Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of Not the Girl Next Door. I'm your host, Meg Reynolds, and I thought today, every week I sit on this podcast and I give you guys a lot of tough love, a lot of hard truths, a lot of, things that you probably need to hear but don't want to hear. So I thought it was time I gave myself that same tough love. And so that's what we're doing today. I'm calling myself out on some things and talking about ways in which I tend to self-sabotage myself and patterns I repeat in my life. And hopefully, again, maybe it makes you feel called out too, and it is actually a dose of tough love for you as well. So figured we might as well dive into it as we are winding down on this season 4 of the podcast, which is just crazy to say that it has been 4 years. I can't believe I'm turning 27 in a month. That's nuts. I don't know when that happened. And every year on this podcast in the season finale, and I'll probably do it again, I say this is the best year of my life. I've learned so much about myself. I'm the happiest I have ever been, blah, blah, blah. And that is true. It is true. And I don't want you guys to sit here and think I'm lying or anything like that. But as much as I come on this podcast and be my bubbly self, and I'm an open book, true vulnerability does still scare me. And that is part of what we're going to talk about today with self-sabotage. But before I dive into that, I figured I'd give you guys a little bit of a happy update on my life. As you guys know, this year a big theme has been my relationship with my father. And I set boundaries with him finally. We went no contact. We've been no contact since January. Slowly started talking again. And now 10 months into this, what I called my Hail Mary attempt to get through to him, I am so happy to share that he is 2 weeks sober from hard liquor. He's not fully sober. He said he's been having beers to help keep the edge off. Oh my God, I'm crying already. Damn it, I'm crying on the internet again. But I can't even tell you guys, the pride I feel. For the first time in a long time, I'm able to say I'm proud to be his daughter. Because for the longest time, my dad, I'm already crying on the internet, motherfuck. For the longest time, my dad wasn't somebody that I was proud of. And I have openly said my biggest fear in life is turning into my father. But for the first time in a long time, the fact that he is finding strength to embark on this sobriety journey, and I know that his fear of losing me, he finally loves me more than he loves the alcohol. And I know he's always loved me more than he loves the alcohol, but he is finally getting out of his own way. He is finally not going to be self-sabotaging. And for the first time in a long time, we were having a conversation where I actually felt like he had a little bit of hope. For a long time, I knew he was struggling with depression severely, PTSD severely, and I knew he just wanted it all to end. And there were some days that I was really scared that I was going to get that phone call. Damn it. There were some days I was really scared I was going to get that phone call, and days where I really thought he may just take a gun to his head. And finally, dang it, and I didn't wear waterproof mascara. Guys, I'm already crying on the internet. Frig, we're not even into the episode. That, he feels better. He didn't realize how much the alcohol was fueling his depression. And he said to me, he said it was the last chapter and he's trying to make it a good one. And I was like, well, that sounds morbid. I really don't like that. He was like, all right, tell you what. He was like, this is my last book in my series and I'm trying to make it a good one and have a good ending. And I was like, I like that so much better. And that really meant so much, because for the first time in that conversation, I didn't worry about it turning angry. I didn't worry about what mood I was catching him in. To know now that I can call my dad at 6 p.m. when I know he's off of work and I don't have to question if how many drinks in he already is. That is the best gift Okay, I'm glad I really didn't do my makeup for this episode because it would be all over the place. But for the longest time, I had said my worst fear in life was turning into my father. And that is true. I don't want to be like him because I've seen what it's cost him. And I've seen the price of self-sabotage, and his life is, I've talked about this before. I said he is a, cautionary tale of what will happen to young men if they don't face their emotion. But he's also a cautionary tale of self-sabotage and what will happen if you continue to rob yourself of your happiness. And obviously, I've been doing a lot of the work needed to not be that person. But no one's perfect. There's that old saying, we're our own worst enemies. And I definitely can be mine. And so that is really what has inspired this week's episode. So let's start with that old saying, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I think a lot of the times we hear this, especially when it's in romantic relationships, of they seem so great, but I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And you are sitting and you're on edge thinking this is too good to be true. It is one thing to remain cautiously optimistic, to give somebody the benefit of the doubt. It is another to be paralyzed, waiting for them to screw you over. And that is something I have a tendency to do in dating and just with anything in life. I think a lot of the times things are too good to be true because, again, I discovered in therapy the other day, there is a part of me that thinks I'm broken and I'm unlovable and that I am not worthy of the things I've worked so hard for. And I look around at where I'm at in touring right now and where I'm at in my photography career, and there is still a part of me that thinks I just got lucky and I just somehow ended up here. And I am negating all of the hard work, all of the networking, all of the hours I've spent learning on the back end because it felt too easy. But it actually wasn't. And I know that it wasn't. And consciously, I can sit here and say it hasn't been an easy journey, but there is still that internal part of me that says, well, you just got lucky. And that is self-sabotage at its core. And the key is obviously not listening to that. Back to the whole waiting for the shoe to drop thing. That is you trading your brain to prepare for pain. It is self-sabotage is literally just a self-fulfilling prophecy. You are sitting here saying, I feel like this is going to happen, or I know this is going to happen, or I'm not worthy of that. And then once it comes to pass, you're like, see, that happened. It is a self-sabotage is just a self-fulfilling prophecy. This kind of goes in tandem with what I was talking about a couple weeks ago with confirmation bias, and how when we have a thought in our head and we are just actively seeking it out, i.e. a partner cheating on us, we are actively seeking out that information. Self-sabotage is the same thing. Honestly, if anything, self-sabotage is part of confirmation bias, if you want to look at it that way as well. So why do we do it? Why do we as people, especially those of us who have some trauma in our past, why do we do it? Why do we self-sabotage? And it's because in some level of regard, we are trying to maintain a sense of control. I know this about myself. I can be an absolute control freak. I am very much a type A person, but a lot of that type A-ness does stem from my trauma, and I'm slowly unlearning that, right? And it's really our way of preparing for pain. It's our way of saying we know what the outcome's going to be, so we can't actually get hurt because we were ready for this, right? And that's what we do. We do it in dating. We do it in life. We do it in all forms. Obviously, we talk about self-sabotage mainly in terms of dating, but self-sabotage just bleeds into everything in our lives. It really, really does. Self-sabotage gives us the illusion of control over our pain. And in reality, what we have to ask ourselves is, say I don't take the risk, what's going to happen is staying the same. And that should be scarier to you than your pain. The idea that you are going to be in this exact spot 1, 2, 3, 5 years from now should be scarier to you than the idea that you may get hurt in the end. Because really, at the end of the day, if practice makes perfect, then you're just really good at failing and making mistakes. If you When you put it like that, it sounds almost silly to fear our mistakes, because mistakes are how we learn. And again, I think this is something that we all consciously know, right? We all know that the only way to get good at something is by learning about it, practicing it, and doing those things. But we only talk about it in the positive sense. We only talk about it of practice makes perfect and you just got to try again. And we keep looking at it through the positive lens, and then we're ignoring all these other emotions over here that are the shame of it, the embarrassment of it, because it is, when you feel like you failed or made a mistake, there is that shame and embarrassment around it. There is maybe some guilt there. Maybe there's some confidence issues there. But none of that gets talked about in the practice makes perfect sense. And those thoughts and emotions are how self-sabotage is able to take over. When in reality, so instead of focusing on practice makes perfect, say, hey, practice does make perfect, but you got to get through the shame and embarrassment of your mistakes first before you can have this thing. And I want to talk about the practice makes perfect thing in regards to this podcast, because this will bleed into another form of self-sabotage, which is it's not the right time. That's another phrase that we hear commonly when it comes to self-sabotage. And I said that for so long when it came to doing full-length video episodes of this podcast, when it came to video clips of this podcast. For the longest time, it's not the right time. I don't have the time. I'm working a corporate job. Really what it was stemming from, and I will be so honest about this, it was stemming from my insecurity about my looks. I will be so for real about that. The reason for the longest time why I didn't put this podcast on video is because I was really insecure about the way I looked. I was insecure about my weight. I was insecure about how I would appear from certain angles, if I have a double chin or not. I was insecure about what people would say about me. And I was right. I get hate comments calling me fat from fucking ugly internet trolls all the damn time, or people without a profile picture, or people wearing their stupid fucking Oakleys. But you know what? Being on video this often has actually helped me. It has actually made me more confident in my looks because I pick myself apart less. My face looks puffy. Oh, I was really stressed that week. Or, oh, I was on my period that week. So like, I know I was a little more inflamed. Or, oh, my eyes look a little tired. Yeah, I slept like 3 hours the night before. So of course I'm going to look a little tired. I stopped putting the pressure on myself to be perfect for every single episode. And that's another thing about the podcast is I was worried that the quality wouldn't be there, right? And I was like, oh, it's not going to be good enough. That's why I didn't start the YouTube. I was like, the quality's not there. It's not good enough. Those are things I had to learn. I had to get over myself, get over my fear of failing and the embarrassment of putting out crappy content and just do it. And I had to get out of my way and stop self-sabotaging. And now it's paying off. I am seeing growth in the podcast like crazy. And I thank every single one of you for being here and listening to me. But hear me when I say I would not be here. This podcast would not look like this. I would not have the quality that I do today had I not gone through those hoops and gone through that embarrassment and dealt with all of that and learned. And here's the thing. I do believe that it is at the right time that the podcast is taking off, and that I think everything did happen the way that it was supposed to. And I'm so happy for that. But there was an element of self-sabotage there. And for the longest time, I was standing in my own way. And I've said this before, but I've never really dove into this topic of how, tongue-tied. I've never really dove into this topic of how we do stand in our own way. And a lot of the times, the only thing that is preventing us from chasing our dreams is ourself. We are standing in our own way and making it so harder for ourselves to achieve our dreams. To another thing with the whole it's not the right time or I don't have the time thing is that is also a form of self-sabotage. It's a way of, again, preventing yourself from being hurt and being crushed. But part of not self-sabotaging and staying true to yourself, taking care of yourself and showing yourself love is that if you tell yourself you're going to do something, you actually do it. You do the hard thing. For me, prime example is writing my book. I have been self-sabotaging writing my book because I'm afraid of failing. It's a dream I've always had and I'm making slow progress on it. It could be done by now. I absolutely know that it could be done by now. I just haven't done it because I let so many other things get in the way of it. And I think a big part of that is because of my fear of failure. It's a fear of that vulnerability because that's really all self-sabotage is. Self-sabotage is just the antithesis of true vulnerability. It's a way of preventing that true vulnerability because true vulnerability is what allows us to get hurt. And as much as I am an open book on this podcast, I know I still fear true vulnerability. And maybe that's part of why I am such an open book on this podcast, right? I think that if I put it all out there and I lay it all out on the table, that nobody can use it against me and nobody can use those things to hurt me. When in reality, that's not what just talking about things and talking about everything going on in my life isn't true vulnerability. Me crying at the beginning of the episode, that was vulnerability. I was letting y'all see the good, the bad, and the ugly. I could have easily stopped recording this, gone, cleaned myself up, gotten a hold of myself, and just came back and talked about it without showing a lot of emotion. And as somebody who would be described by many, not some, but many, as overly emotional, my overthinking and over-explaining myself and over-communicating is also another form of self-sabotage. And it's another way of me trying to maintain some sense of control. Because again, I think if I'm laying it all out there, nobody can use those things to hurt me. But I have had to learn that sometimes the most powerful thing I can say is nothing. Sometimes there really is nothing to be said. And for someone like me who is an overthinker and very anxious girly, that is so hard to do. But I want to tell you guys a story about how I'm currently practicing saying nothing. Because currently I'm grieving a friendship, a very big friendship, a very big piece of my life in my 20s. And this is somebody who I thought would be part of my life forever. I really did. I thought she would be a bridesmaid at my wedding, probably my maid of honor, honestly. I always envisioned that. And I considered her family, and I described her as a sister. And we had a falling out earlier this year. And, you know, I kind of alluded to that on the podcast a couple times, how I've gotten rid of a lot of people this year. But this one still really, really stings and bothers me. And I found out that yesterday she moved back home and didn't say a word. And that really stings, because I think some part of me had a hope that maybe there would be some form of a reconciliation. You know, I know our friendship would never be the same, but part of me hoped that maybe there could be a come to Jesus moment. You know, I know what I think happened in this situation, and I'm sure her version of events are very different, and that's okay. I can live with that. I can live with her, you know, having that version of me in her head of that I'm the bad guy, and in my story, she's the bad guy. We both definitely made mistakes, and there are things that I wish I had said, but now they're definitely better left unsaid. And part of me really wanted to send a goodbye text saying, hey, I wish, you know, and I'll just say here that I wish her well, and that I still have so much love for her, and I'll always have so much love for her. And, you know, she was a big piece of my life and my healing, and I thank her for that. I thank her for all the memories. You know, I will always cherish them. I still have her photos everywhere, and in memory books, I'll always remember her, and she'll always be a piece of my story. And I think, unfortunately, the reality is we're at a place now where we've simply outgrown each other. And it's very clear there are a lot of things that we do not see eye to eye on, things that are detrimental to a friendship, a true healthy friendship. And I still wish her well, and I want her to be happy, and I want her to heal. And I really, really hope that she does. And all those things are going to be left unsaid, except if she listens to this podcast, which I doubt. But it's hard. Friendship grief is a really weird thing, because this just really feels like the final nail in the coffin. Like the chapter is closed fully. You know, if she was still living here, there's always that we run in the same circles. It was likely we would have run into each other at some point, but now that chapter is just fully closed, and friendship grief is a really weird thing. And I think that whole thing of needing closure is another form of self-sabotage, because if we sit there and say, I just want to talk to them one last time because I need closure. I need closure. I would encourage you to ask yourself, what answer are you looking for from them that would actually make you feel better about the situation? Because here's the thing. I know if I texted her, I would not hear what I wanted to. I would not hear the apology that I think that I am owed. I would not hear, what's the word? I would not hear her acknowledging her mistakes, and there would be no open dialogue of how we hurt each other. And that would be what I need for closure. Instead, I could be ignored. I could be met with just a, you too, whatever it is. In my opinion, I think the need for closure is a form of self-sabotage, because once again, you're unable to sit with yourself and your emotions. You're unable to sit with yourself and your emotions and give yourself the closure that you need, because we can give ourselves that closure, right? You can sit there and self-reflect of what were my mistakes? How did they hurt me? How did I enable that behavior? But again, needing closure is just another way of putting things outward and taking things off of us, right? Self-sabotage, I think, sometimes really does stem from simply our inability to look in the mirror and hold ourselves accountable of what's actually going on. And I've talked about it before, how my friends are my mirrors, how they're the mirrors I can't hide from. We shouldn't be hiding from any mirrors. We should be able to look ourselves in the mirror and say, I love myself. You should be able to say that you're a good person and know that and believe that in your heart. I heard recently somebody I know asked some of our friends, do you think I'm a good person? If you need to ask people if you're a good person, I think you already know the answer. And, I want to be able to wake up and look myself in the mirror and say that I love myself, that I'm a good person, that I am a good friend, that I am a kind and empathetic person, that I am loved and know I am loved, because at the end of the day, even if nobody else loves me, I love myself, and that love should be enough. And those are some affirmations that you can and should say to yourself on the daily. Like I said, self-sabotage is an absence of self-love. And one of the highest forms of love you can give yourself is by keeping your promises to yourself. Talked about before, I've broken promises to myself a million times over when it comes to writing my book, starting video for the podcast, a million things. I think another one that maybe I do, and definitely do, not maybe, definitely, I use my PCOS as a scapegoat sometimes of why I haven't lost more weight. I blame the stress of touring. I blame all these other things, but there are habits of mine that I am not consistent with, that I should be consistent with, that probably would have helped me be further along by now. Are there factors that are contributing, like the PCOS? Yeah, absolutely. But I think I definitely scapegoat those on top of, I'm really bad at taking my supplements consistently. That's one thing I do. But like I said, self-sabotage is just an absence of self-love. And so you have to keep your promises to yourselves. It is a form of self-respect. It is a form of self-love. And without it, you have nothing. You are simply self-sabotaging your life. Because self-sabotage is, again, it's an absence of self-love, and it's a fear of growth. You're trying to maintain control because growth is scary. Change is scary. And so self-sabotage really does bleed into all facets of our life. But really, it's you being your own worst enemy. It's me being my own worst enemy. And it all stems from up here. You're letting your thoughts control you. Our brain is a powerful machine. And I've kind of started diving into the world of neuroscience a little bit and actually understanding these things. And it's fascinating to know the ways in which we can lie to ourselves and the realities we can create for ourselves. At the end of the day, we really are all creatives in some form, because our thoughts be lying to us on the daily. But it's knowing how to separate those true thoughts versus the ones of us lying to ourselves, and trusting ourselves in our discernment to know that. But I want to make something clear when it comes to this conversation of self-sabotage. I don't want you to think that self-criticism is self-depreciation. Those are two separate things. You can critique yourself and hold yourself accountable without being negative towards yourself, without saying that you're stupid or you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know what you're doing. Those are unhelpful critiques. Those are critiques that will absolutely contribute to your self-sabotage narrative and reinforce the bad behaviors and make yourself your self-fulfilling prophecy and your confirmation bias and all those things. Self-depreciation and self-deprecating talk, not okay. We should not be talking to ourselves like that. In fact, we should obviously be paying attention to ourselves, to how we talk to ourselves. But self-criticism and holding ourselves accountable is a healthy and good skill to have. You should be able to say, I didn't give that 100% effort. I definitely could next time. And check in with yourself. Why didn't I give it my best? Or, I was late on this deadline. Why? What excuses did I make for myself? Or, I kind of snapped on my boyfriend and girlfriend. I snapped on them and they didn't actually do anything wrong. Why am I snapping at them? Why am I feeling emotionally triggered? What is happening in my body and in my mind that is making me behave like this outwardly? And so self-critiquing yourself and holding yourself accountable is healthy, and I think will actually help you combat your self-sabotage, because again, it is your self-awareness and your cognizance to say, oh, I had a bad day at work, or, oh, this person, it's actually about this person. It has nothing to do with my partner. I'm just taking it out on them. Whatever it is, being able to have that awareness is how you defeat self-sabotage. And one last thing in terms of talking about ourselves, because it's all about me, guys. I know I can be my own worst enemy. And I know on this podcast, I talk a lot about growth and healing and positive, and it's sunshine and rainbows and unicorns. Oh my God, everything is so happy and great. That can get really exhausting. We're in this era on social media where everything is geared towards self-help, self-growth, being your best self, leveling up in life. It is exhausting. You don't need to be leveling up your life 24/7. That is there's no rest in that. That is dumb. That kind of talk 24/7, you can absolutely still be self-sabotaging and running from something if you talk like that all the damn time. Because this constant need to do better, this constant need to grow and one-up yourself in a way is another form of escapism and self-sabotage, because you're never going to be happy with where you're at. And you aren't able to just sit with yourself and allow yourself to be. And that can contribute to the feelings of, I'm never accomplishing anything. I'm never getting anything done. I'm never achieving my goals. I'm never achieving my dreams. How are you going to achieve anything that you seemingly want if you're constantly moving the needle? It's like when you're playing a game of cat and mouse, or like you're having that feather toy with a cat and you're constantly moving the feather around and the cat's constantly chasing it, or like a laser pointer or something. That's what you're doing with your own life. That's not helpful. That's not actually leveling up and taking care of yourself and growing and changing. That's just you exhausting yourself, and you will eventually lead yourself to burnout, whether you want to hear that or not. That constant need of being a machine is gonna burn you out. And so again, like I said earlier, sometimes the best thing you can say is nothing. Sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing. Just let yourself be in your body. Let yourself be in the moment and look around and appreciate all the hard work of where you're at. If you feel like life is just speeding and passing you by, there could be an element of this. I know that's how it is for me. I feel like I blinked and I'm turning 27. Granted, this is something my dad has always said to me, that the days are short, but the years are long. No, that's wrong. The days are long, but the years are short. That's it. He would always say to me that the days are long, but the years are short, and that you'll blink and before you know it, you'll be my age. Well, now I'm turning 27, and my mom had me at this age. Well, she had me at 26, and I blinked, and suddenly I'm no longer a college student. Suddenly I'm no longer the girl who just moved to Nashville. Suddenly I didn't just start this podcast. We're 4 years in. And I think there is an element for me of feeling like things are just passing me by because I haven't stopped to live in the moment, and I haven't stopped and allowed myself to be excited and happy about where I'm at and joyful about where I'm at. And I think if you're someone that struggles with that, it is, again, another form of self-sabotage. It's you not feeling worthy of that happiness. And I think a lot of us struggle with that, right? We feel unworthy of our happiness. We feel unworthy of the hard things that we've achieved and worked for. We feel unworthy of it because of some internal shame. And so we self-sabotage. I've done it. You've done it. And here's the thing. I can spot it in other people from a mile away. Sometimes it's really hard to spot in myself, and I'm working on it. And hence why I started this episode. I caught myself self-sabotaging the other day with a guy I've been seeing, and it's going well. I like him. I like getting to know him. But again, according to the dating rules of social media, he wasn't acting how I thought he needed to act. He wasn't he canceled something and then he wasn't texting me enough. And I was like, oh, if he doesn't text me by the morning, I'm just going to end it. And I almost sent that text. And then I didn't. And that was over a week ago now. And now it's going well. And because, again, I stopped myself and I said nothing and just sat back and let things unfold. That's why we are where we are. And my self-sabotage almost kept me single again. And I'm sure there are a lot of other connections that I have self-sabotaged, but they weren't the right connection then. They weren't the right person, right time. And that's okay. Again, I am a very anxious dater. I know that. I've talked about the ways in which I'm bad at dating. But I'm learning. And even if with this guy, if it goes nowhere, if this is just to teach me to stop self-sabotaging in dating, great. I'm going to be just fine either way. I don't know if he's my person. I know that I like him. He's cute and we have a great time and we have a lot in common. And that's about all I know right now. And that's about all I should know right now. It's only a couple weeks in. But yeah, we're going out tonight and he planned the whole date and it was cute and I'm excited and he put thought into it. Bare fucking minimum. Okay. Anywho. But all of that to say, when it comes to self-sabotage, we really are our own worst enemies in life. When in reality, we should be our heroes. We should be our best friends. We should be our biggest fans. We should be delusional about ourselves and our dreams. I think in order to achieve any big dream, big life, you have to be delusional about it. You have to have such blind faith that you are going to get this thing and nothing is going to stand in your way. Because anything other than that, you will self-sabotage at every step in the road and you will cost yourself your dream. Do you really want to cost yourself your dream? I don't think so. Your dream is not going to get just handed to you. Yeah, sure. Some people, it seems like they have this overnight viral success, but there are a lot of people that crash and burn from that. If you don't have such, this is the only time I will ever tell you guys you can be delusional is when it comes to chasing your dreams. Okay. So take the opportunity to be delusional and have blind faith in yourself. Don't put your blind faith in that man and all that stuff. Put your blind faith in yourself and learn to trust yourself and your discernment. I digress. But that was an episode of me calling myself out and talking about self-sabotage. We're all works in progress. I'm sure I will stop recording this podcast and I'll probably self-sabotage some things maybe 5 times a day. I'm kidding. I'm joking. Not actually going to do that. But I want you next time you feel impulsively emotional to just stop and take a deep breath. That's what I've had to get comfortable doing is just stop, take a deep breath, and really think about what you're about to say or do. Maybe table it, come back to it in 30 minutes. Let yourself have a clear head, because as much as I also talked about a couple weeks ago as anger is a weak emotion and there are things beneath the surface, a lot of the times our anger and impulsivity of emotion does lead to self-sabotage. So learning how to sit with their feelings and sit with our emotions is your greatest strength in combating self-sabotage. That's really the only way to battle it. The number one way to prevent yourself from self-sabotaging your life any more than you already have is to just learn to be with yourself, be with your emotions, be in your body and mind, and sit with it and process it. That's it. There's no big secret. There is no grand 5-step plan. I can't tell you guys exactly what it is going to feel like because I'm not going to be in your shoes. Only you can know. And this is why it is, once again, so important to get to know yourself. Everything comes back to getting to know ourselves. Look at that. But that is all for this week's episode of Not the Girl Next Door. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review, please, wherever you are listening. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's at Not the Girl Next Door Podcast, NTGND Podcast. Follow us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all of the places. And I will see you guys next week for another episode. Bye for now.